Welcome to this modeling episode of the Tabletop Battlefield. I'm Jason, the creator of the Tabletop Battlefield, and today we're going to give Dogmeat some armor just like he has in the video game. So this is a Fallout Wasteland Warfare modeling tutorial. For this process, of course, you need your miniature here. I'm using the Dogmeat Scout miniature from the Heroes of Sanctuary Hills set, but I imagine the one from the starter set will work pretty well alright. For the armor, I'm going to be using polystyrene strips, so I have some 0.01 inch by 1/4 inch strips, and then I have 2 diameters of rods. So I have 0.04 inch rods and 0.025 inch rods. Alright, so we're going to dive into the middle of this build here. As you can see, I've already got 2 of the back armor panels on Dogmeat. Now I need to create the piece that kind of connects these 2 armor panels together, and I'm going to show you that process, and therefore you can use that to kind of work back and fill in all the other armor panels, because a lot of this video is going to be, you know, nice montage mode. So first step, like I said, this is kind of like a cosplay for this tiny miniature. So I want to use some green painter's tape and place it across his back here in order to figure out the size of the gap between the 2 existing armor panels. Next, I'm going to take my thin Sharpie and I'm going to trace out the shape of this armor panel. Now I can just barely see where those armor pieces are through the tape. You might not be able to on the camera, but I can see where they are. So I'm going to very carefully just trace out the shape of the armor panel like that. Next, I'm going to cut off a small piece of this polystyrene that's big enough for the armor piece. I'm going to remove the tape off the back of Dogmeat and stick it down onto this piece of polystyrene. So very carefully using my knife, I'm going to cut this piece out. And polystyrene, you really have to score the material, and it should kind of pop right off like that. And now this is the Fallout universe, so there's probably a lot of handmade stuff out there, especially this kind of dog armor that's more or less custom for your pets and attack dogs and sort of things. So if it's not perfect, don't worry super a lot about that. It just kind of, if it's a little bit rickety per se, it'll help sell the whole fact that this is, you know, Fallout. I got the piece cut out. Now I got to carefully remove the green tape. Now if you are building a piece like the side or leg armor where you need both sides, be sure not to lose this piece of tape, because this is your template. You need to peel it off and stick it down with another piece of polystyrene and continue the process for the other side of the template. So now it's time to very carefully fit this piece down. Let's just kind of hold it in place first to make sure it fits where I want it to. That looks pretty good. It's pretty darn close to fitting. A little bit of super glue down this contractor paper I have sitting right here. I am then going to take this armor piece on the edge of my knife here. I'm going to dip it in that super glue and then glue it down to the back of Dogmeat. And then hold it in place long enough until the super glue dries. So here's a neat little trick we can do to make your armor panels look a little bit more kind of homemade, because let's face it, they are. And you probably got a little gap here between the side and top armor panels. We're going to make it look like that's welded. So for that, I'm going to take a pin. Now it's very important, this is a pin that's going to be sacrificed, so make sure it's something you don't really care too much about. I've got an old T-pin here that I use for building aircraft and such, or costumes and things. I'm going to put down some super glue on my contractor's paper and mix in a little bit of baby powder. What this will do is create a bit of a paste, and that paste can be spread along the miniature along those lines there to look like there's a little bit of bead of welding. I'm going to continue this build working on the leg armor. There's probably going to be 2 pieces, one here and then one there, and then we got some more details to add. The process though is basically the same. I'm going to start with some tape on the miniature itself. I'm going to draw out the shape of the desired armor panel. I'm going to remove the tape and apply it down to a strip of the polystyrene and cut it out. I am using a sewing pin to carefully remove the template, and once the corner is raised up enough to where I can kind of pull it by hand, I can remove it and hopefully keep it intact pretty well. Set the first armor piece off to the side, and then I will tape this one down to another piece of the polystyrene. and cut this one out as well. You can compare the two and see how close they ended up. They're not too far apart from each other. There's one, there's the other. Good, so I want to align them like that. So now they're kind of mirror opposite, left and right. I'm going to put a dot on this side, and that's going to indicate that is the outside of the armor panel. Because when you apply the same armor piece to the left and right side of the miniature, you need to basically glue the opposite sides inward. Take my knife, pick up the armor panel, dab it in the super glue, and then we're going to carefully apply it to the miniature. I'm going to do one more set of armor panels for the thighs of his legs. Alright, I got enough armor panels on him. Now we got to add some more details to the dog armor. There's a leash attachment point that always kind of sits on the top here. There's straps as well as pieces that connect each of the armor panels together. Let's start with the leash attachment point. I'm going to be using this 0.04 inch polystyrene rod, and I got a pair of needle-nose pliers. This is just going to be a very delicate process of using the pliers to bend the polystyrene rod up there. And then I'm going to clip off the other side. I'm using the Games Workshop's cutters here, and just kind of, I'm going to eyeball it a little bit, and we'll do that. You can always change the size as needed, right? So very carefully, taking the needle-nose pliers and bending the other side upward. Let's see how that looks compared to the miniature. It's still a little big. I think what I will do is sand it down a bit. Gonna grab it with needle-nose pliers such that where I want to kind of sand it down to is all that's like sticking out of the pliers. And I'm going to sand that across this 220 grit sandpaper. Then, using some tweezers, because that thing is so tiny we need tweezers at this point, I'm going to dip the two ends in the super glue. Gonna line it up so that it's on the back of Dogmeat as best I can. Put a little bit of super glue down on the anchor points here. And then I'll mix in a little bit of the baby powder to do that welding method. That'll also help to strengthen the bond for the leash attachment point. Alright, so that's looking cool. It's got a little leash attachment now. Now it's starting to look like some dog armor, isn't it? Okay, the next thing we have to do, there's two more steps to build into this, and I suppose you could probably go even more crazy details if you wanted to, but I think I'm just about as far as I would want to go with this build. I want to run a strap that goes along underneath his belly around to the other side of the armor. That's one of the things you'll see in the pictures from Fallout, that there's a strap there that holds the armor on. For that, I'm going to return to my polystyrene strip. It's in my ruler. I'm going to more or less cut it down. It doesn't have to be perfect, just kind of close enough, right? Using my tweezers, I'm going to take this strip that I just cut. I'm going to dip one end. We're going to dip that in the super glue. I ran the strap through Dogmeat's legs here under his belly, and I'm attaching it to the point of the armor where I want the strip to start, or the strap to start. Just hold it there for a minute, and I'll probably have glued my fingers to the miniature, but that's all right. It's all part of this process. Both fingers are glued to the miniature right now. Oh, it's not reckoning too bad. So the next step here is to very carefully apply a little bit of super glue to the strap and to Dogmeat's belly right there. And then I'm gonna pull the strap up and hold it more or less in the position it should be. It's not glued up to the armor yet, but it should be in about a minute glued to his belly. Now the last part is to glue this strap right up to the armor. I'm gonna take my little GW clippers here, and I'm going to cut the strap right at the base of the armor. Whoop, fudge. Well, now it came off a little bit. I guess it wasn't fully dried, but that's all right. So we're gonna go back and redo what we just did, but that happens. I'm gonna put a little bit of glue right at the base of the armor where I plan to affix the strap to it. And then I'm gonna take my pin here and I'm just gonna push it up and hold it in place. And that should, you know, be all right within a minute, but that's what I said about a minute ago. And if you find if you have any little bit of a gap between the strap and the armor, just use the same method we've been using with the mixture of super glue and the baby powder to make a paste and fill it in. Okay, so our armor is almost done. There's one last thing we need to do to really give it that feel of dog meat armor, or dog armor from I almost said Warhammer 40,000. Dog armor from Fallout. And that it looks to be in the video game that these individual panels here are kind of connected together with ropes. And that's where the second size, the smaller size of the polystyrene rods is going to come in. I've got some 0.025 inch rods, and I'm going to cut these down and glue them on the miniature as if they're those ropes. Now we've got two armor panels that need to be connected on either side of the miniature, the top leg armor and the more bottom leg armor, same on the other side as well. So each one of those needs 2 segments of rope. I'm going to take one of these polystyrene rods and cut off 8 short pieces. I'm going to cut each one down just a tiny bit, because yeah, they're almost like twice as long as they need to be. Then I'll dip each one in the super glue and affix it to the miniature. And here we go with the final piece of rope. Of course, as I say that, it just goes to hell in a handbasket, but that's about what you'd expect with my builds. Come on. Cool. So thank you guys all for watching this episode of the Tabletop Battlefield. Once again, I'm Jason, the creator of the Tabletop Battlefield. And in the next episode in this series working with Dogmeat, we're going to be painting up the entire miniature, including this armor that we just made today. So thank you guys all for watching, and have a great few days until the next video comes out.